I used to have to get up at like 4:30 and sit on the M25. And I used to listen to Chris Evans when he was on Radio 2 in the morning. And I can't remember the details precisely, but I remember this was before I was running, but it really stuck with me, and it's completely helped. He said, if you're finding it really tough, he said, you only need to know 2 things about getting going with running. And I might be misquoting him, and I'm sure he's not going to listen, so I'll just carry on. Maybe he will. He said, if you're finding it really tough, just shuffle. And then the second one was, if it's feeling okay, go a bit further. That was literally it. I only needed those 2 things.
Welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast, where we tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. My name's Craig Lewis, and this week I was joined by ultra runner and environmentalist Rebecca Leek. Now, despite only starting running 2 years ago, Rebecca recently completed a 71-mile race. And not only that, she won it. As this podcast goes live on Tuesday, June 28th, Rebecca is preparing to come to the home of Running Tales, Northampton, that's the one in England, to take part in the Running Out of Time Climate Relay, a huge celebration of climate action and nature. She'll pick up the baton as it heads through the town on a journey which started at Ben Nevis on June the 10th and will finish at Big Ben on July the 11th. The relay aims to encourage everyone from our national government to individuals and communities to all work together to protect the world for future generations, which is something Rebecca is really passionate about. We also spoke about the role of schools in encouraging sports, including running for all, how Rebecca herself felt excluded and what needs to change. But I started our conversation by asking her why she was coming here to Northampton.
Yeah, I really like travelling around the country, which we might talk about at some point. You know, I like not travelling very far. I've just recently been to Leeds on the train. I live over in the east, but I haven't ever been to Northampton. And there's a thing called the Climate Relay that's happening over the next month. I think from the 10th of June to the 11th of July, I think. And there's 366 stages, and it connects Ben Nevis to Big Ben, and it's called Running Out of Time because we're running out of time in terms of the climate. Our carbon budget, it's quite an interesting term that I've been reading about, is very, very small. We don't have much leeway anymore. You know, we're missing targets over and over again. And so we are running out of time. And so there's this event. I noticed it last year. I wasn't a confident enough runner last year. I'm not particularly confident now, but this time it's a real adventure. You know, I've got 3 children. I work. I've booked the day off. I've got to get the train because I will not drive if I have to, if I can avoid it. I'm getting the train, getting there, running to the start, doing the run, running back again, getting back on the train, and then hopefully getting back in time with enough time, for dinner and the children. So that's what I'm doing next Wednesday in Northampton. So that's the bit of Northampton I'm going to see very briefly.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. You're doing, for people in Northampton who listen to this, and there are a few, Rebecca will be running the 9 kilometres between Sixfields and Great Brington Post Office. I'm not sure how beautiful that's going to be for you, but you'll see a little bit of Northampton in there as well. And the good news, I think, is that it's not too far from the railway station to Sixfields, so you're not too far.
No, that's right. And I had to look really carefully at the map because, as I say, I live over in the east. And if you look at the map of the route, and this is no criticism of the organisers because they have to choose a route, but they've really missed out the east. And it's this corner that comes down to Northampton and then it goes off to the west again. So it was literally that little bit that I could just about do on a day, get there in time and get back again. So that's why I'm doing that one. And so I know exactly, and I know how far it is from the station, and I won't be able to take my laptop on the train, so which will be very unusual for me. I'll have to not do any work or write in a notebook with a pen because I can't then carry it on my back to run, really. I'm happy running with a backpack, but I don't think I want my laptop with me, so no.
But this is it's a hugely important campaign that people are doing here, and it's interesting you mentioned things about taking the train to the event rather than driving, because obviously that's a hugely important part of cutting down on carbon footprints and so on, isn't it? And I know it's all a subject which is very close to your heart.
Yeah, I love running so much. I've been running now for about 2 years, and I love it for so many reasons, and it's actually changed my life. So it's been transformative, to be honest. and I'm so pleased to see people running, and then it's so great that we, with this the human body that is so designed for moving, and more people are doing it, but there's such a burden on the environment that we runners bring. We ride, we drive to races, we fly to races, we buy loads of kit. I saw at the beginning of the London Marathon, I just couldn't believe it. Somebody saw it as a breakthrough that they had organised some kind of pickup of the clothes that are deposited at the beginning of the marathon so that they could be donated to charity. I just looked at it and I thought, what is this madness that people turn up to the London Marathon and literally just take off their T-shirt and leave it on the road? So the idea that it's a triumph that they're now collected and donated to charity, like this waste. And so running is so environmentally friendly, just need a pair of trainers. And yet, because commodification of everything, and things are commercialized, aren't they, and people buy stuff and travel to places, there's this other side to it that I think we have to be really careful and really responsible about.
Yeah, and it is becoming I've noticed it become a bigger thing amongst a lot of races where you have options now where, I don't know, instead of having a T-shirt or instead of having a medal, which I know a lot of people love, and there's a debate around it all because people are like, I really want my medal, but you get the option to do things like plant trees, don't you? I think there's something called trees not teas.
Trees not teas, yeah, that's right. And you're completely right. I did a big race recently that I'm so proud about, and I won it, so I got the trophy. But if I just had the medal, it was a bit of a sorry piece of wood, and I think people might have been a bit disappointed. But so yeah, there is that thing, isn't there, about getting something at the end. But yeah, trees not teas, because who needs a T-shirt? Well, I certainly don't. I've got enough T-shirts, thanks. So that's really good. And then there's the Green Runners. So the Green Runners is something that I came across. I can't actually remember why. It was maybe on Twitter. And so you have to make pledges to join the Green Runners, which I really like. So there's a little bit of gatekeeping. So you have to make some pledges maybe around what you eat or what you wear or how you move, which is related to what transport you use, really, to get to these races, those kinds of things. So they're really good, and they're a collaborator really with this climate relay, and they do really good stuff. And the founders and the people that are behind it, speaking out. That's right. So that's another one. It's like, and that's what I'm doing now. So I'm kind of keeping to one of my pledges, which is to join it. And it's it's not easy for everyone to speak out. We can speak out quietly, or we can speak out in other ways. So and actually raising it as an issue. So things like emailing a race and saying, can we not have a trees not teas option in the race, and trying to be brave and say stuff like that and raise awareness. So they're doing really good things.
Yeah, I think Green Runners have particularly come to even greater prominence because I think they have a lot of backing from some of the ultra running community. I think Jasmine Paris,
Absolutely.
Damien Hall are both members of that and have really pushed it out there. But it's interesting you mentioned the pledges, because I was going to ask you about that, because I think over the 30 odd days of this relay, you've pledged to do various things yourself.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, now that you've asked me that, I can't actually remember, because when you sign up, it's like, I'm not going to eat as much, this and the other. But the thing is, I'm not saying I'm perfect, and we're all hypocrites, but like I already take public transport as much as I possibly can. I have an electric car. I was one of the first people, thank you very much, to have an electric car. And I'm vegan, and I tell people about all this stuff all the time. I work in education, and I'm a bit boring when that's maybe not the right word, but I'll always raise it as an issue. Single-use plastic in schools, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's more of the same, and focusing on that, I think. But yeah, it makes you actually really say stuff and take action.
Yeah, I mean, I've just actually got them in front of me now to jog your mind a little bit. It's talking about things for people listening, like using existing clothing and training for the event rather than, I'm going to go and get a new pair of trainers.
I only have one pair of trainers, so I deliberately have bought a kind of hybrid trail pair of trainers, which it's really hard for me to find the right shoes. Actually, shoes for me are really a thing anyway, but and now they've been discontinued, so I'm a bit stressed about that. So I have one pair it's my second pair, if you like. It took me a while to find the right ones, but I wear them and wear them and wear them. And so I only have one pair of trainers. So again, it was like, well, I don't really buy anything anyway. So I'll just be carrying on in the same pair of trainers. Yeah, so I've got to now think of a plan when eventually they run out. They're really cool actually, because they've got grips on the bottom and they wear out gradually. And it was really useful recently because I had a bit of a injury thing on my left foot, and I had to go to a physio, and we were able to look on the soles of the trainers to see if there was an imbalanced wearing out, because they're all I wear, and actually there wasn't, which was quite reassuring. But yeah, I do not know what I'm going to do. I've probably got to start researching it, because as the mileage goes up, you do eventually have to get a new pair of trainers.
Yeah, it's something that's sadly unavoidable, isn't it, as we go along this path that we enter upon as runners. But talking of that path, I know that actually it's not one that you've been on for that long, despite having done quite a lot of miles this year. I think you're up to 800 miles this year now. You've only been running for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think I started literally about 2 years ago, maybe even this week. It was around June, maybe it was the end of May. I can't quite remember. I was going through a really difficult time, and I don't know what, I just do not know why I did it. I just went on a little shuffle and then did it again the next day, and then did it again, and it just made me feel so much better. Having now looked at it more carefully and thought back to the past of my life, I really have always liked steady endurance, and that's always been something that I've naturally defaulted to, although life happens. So 3 pregnancies, obviously I wasn't doing it much, and 3 babies, and you just takes over your life. And I'd always try and go swimming and feel so much better, but then I would never keep it up because of life. You know, I went to Italy for a year when I was a student, and it was about 20 cents to go to the swimming pool as a student, and I started going about 3 or 4 times a week, and I just got myself up to doing about 100 lengths. You know, I'm really small. I was overlooked in sports at school completely. Team sports don't make much sense to me, and I could never really I can't do that play scenario where you kind of really want to win. I wasn't really that bothered at all about winning, so it was all a bit silly. It all felt a bit silly. And then of course the running you do at school is very short distances, or you do one long distance occasionally and therefore do it terribly, unless like some magic miracle you're kind of good enough at it. And so my experience of longer distance running was generally kind of asthma attacks, and short distance running was silly because I can't run fast. I still can't run fast. I'm quite good. I've just done a 71-mile race, and I've got my 5k time accidentally, really, because I don't really try very hard on it, down from the 40s into the mid 20s. But I'm not, I'm never going to be a sprinter, and I was not a sprinter at school. But there is a pattern of me liking steady, long stuff. And so gradually I suddenly went, I'll just run a bit further. I'll just run a bit further. And I think it might be my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you say about when we start running at school, because it is that 100, 200, 400, and then they go, you're going to do a long distance, 1500. And you're like, that's not really, I mean, when you're a kid, I suppose it is, but that's nowhere near even a 5k, which nowadays as runners, we all think is the shortest distance.
Yeah, and I went on a couple of kind of outdoor pursuits weeks in Wales when I was in years 7 and 8, or 8 and 9. I think it was 7 and 8, and we did kind of gorge walking. We walked up Snowdonia, and I really loved those days. And my parents went to the Lake District for their honeymoon, and they took us away a couple of times to the Lake District. But I do remember moaning quite a lot. So I don't know if that was because I was 14 and I didn't want to be made to walk up and down a mountain. But I did actually really like it. And whenever my kids, the last couple of years, have kind of gone, what do you want to do for Mother's Day? My default answer, this was before I started running, my default answer was like, I just want to go for a walk all day. Because that's all I knew. I didn't really know running, but I was like, can we just go for a long walk? And I don't want to go for a walk. And so that was actually what I was wanting to do. And now I've learned to run, and it literally is that for people listening. Like, you just have to learn how to do it. that I can run forever. I've run, well, the longest I've run for is about 18 hours. So not as long as some people, but I can run for 18 hours and it was okay. So,
no, well, that's definitely a lot of running to get in. I want to come back to some of your running achievements in a minute, but I just want to ask one other question around the situations with schools and so on, and your own experiences, because as you mentioned earlier, you are an educator now, you've been involved in education. Do you think there is a better way of schools encouraging people to run and just encouraging to do sports generally, if they're not to use an American expression, if they're not one of the jocks who are naturally getting in every sports team?
Yeah, I think we have to think really carefully about bias that we bring in to the classroom, if you like, with children. There's gender bias everywhere. My daughters, when they were younger, at the school they went to, which was a lovely school, the girls in the play were cast as the petals in a dance, and the boys were cast as lightning. And so they were like the sturdy, strong dancers, and the girls were like the lovely, gentle ones. And that's just a micro moment. But there are thousands. I've got 3 daughters, and I just see it everywhere. So that kind of, all the girls, they do that, and the boys do this. I just think we need to just throw everyone in the mud. Girls as well. But yeah, I think one of the things we really battle with in primary schools is timetables and short amounts of time. There are ways around it. We struggle with it in art as well, particularly. So that really sinking in for a few hours and allowing the children to just go into something. And it's similar, isn't it, then, on kind of long distance walking, just going for a walk all afternoon, or marching quite fast, because that is really, a really fantastic thing for your body to learn to do, is walking. A lot of people have never walked more than about 10 miles. And so building up the stamina for children, and then in that creative arts experience of kind of going into a flow and into a state, how to build that into your curriculum offer. There's a lot of challenge from Ofsted that I'm very involved with all the challenge at the moment with Ofsted, so don't get me started. Yeah, I think it's possible, but we are limited on time. The school days are not very long, and we have to fit an awful lot into the curriculum, and how things are valued. Different things are valued differently. And certainly if you said to Ofsted, well, every Friday we all go on a long walk and have a picnic all day, I don't think we'd get very far. But yeah, as I said at the beginning, really challenging ourselves about, well, they're the sporty ones and they're not the sporty ones. I certainly was overlooked. Definitely was overlooked. I went to music school in the 6th form. And it was a music school within a mainstream standard school, if you like. And I remember on the swimming gala. So I was always a decent swimmer. I learnt to swim. I could swim a bit. And for some reason, I'd been put into, in the swimming gala, the 2-length race rather than the 1-length race, which was the long race, which is obviously not very long at all. And I didn't do any sport when I was at that school. I was one of the musicians, and we smoked behind the bike sheds, and we didn't really do any of that stuff. I think for my sports option, I did rambling, which involved us sitting in the woods sometimes and then coming back again. And but I think I finished a length ahead of the other people swimming. I remember I got to the end, and I remember there was a tap on my head, literally. So one of the PE teachers had gone, "Oh, who's that?" Tapped me on my head. I looked up, and he went, "Oh, it's you," like that. They still didn't come and talk to me about being in the squad or anything like that. I was just written off, just like that, because I was a small flute player. I don't know. So there we are.
I had a strangely opposite experience to that, in that I was never amazing, but I was always good enough at sports to be in kind of the football, rugby, cricket team. I was actually not too bad at high jump when I was around about 14, but for some awful reason they decided to put me in the county 100 meters, and I was okay at sort of cross country, but terrible at 100 meters. And I think if it's possible to be lapped in a 100-meter race, I would have been lapped. but I think one of the most interesting things is how to encourage those less obviously sporty people to take part in it, because it can be very discouraging when you're perhaps the person with, I don't know, slightly less coordination, not so naturally fast, and you walk into a PE lesson and everybody else is really good and you're not very, and you're like, I don't like sports, when actually you might, you just need to be given a chance to do it, I suppose.
Yeah, I've had a couple of members of staff involved with my own children who have been who have challenged me, actually. Well done them, in that they might not be the shape that fits the picture. And I've even said something like that to one of the teachers, and I said, well, I know she might not completely. She went, well, we don't need to worry about that because she's doing it and she's really good. And I felt like going, yes, thank you for calling me out on that. So there are people there around that get it, and we don't all have to be future Olympians, do we? We just need to be fit humans that are happy in ourselves, and so do it slowly and do it and enjoy it, and that's the thing. And if it so happens that you end up streaking ahead slightly, well, then carry on training and get better at it. But just enjoy it. It's a bit the same as music, actually. I did a lot of music as a child, and there's this whole thing about you go to music school and music college, and it's all about elitism and listening to every single note and really critiquing everything, and how many of us are actually professional musicians? And really, what a shame that we aren't all just able to sing some folk songs and enjoy it. And it's kind of not really within our culture of just enjoying music for the sake of it, like it is in other cultures. And I think some of the kind of education system has a little bit to answer for in that as well. Yeah.
And just going back to your own running, I guess there is I don't know if hope's the right word, probably not, but there is hope for people who didn't do anything at school to go on and do lots of running. And as you mentioned, you've run for 18 hours, and I know that you did that 71 miler as well, which is just
the same one.
It's the same one, but you won that race.
Yeah, oh, it was so amazing. It really was amazing. In fact, it was so amazing that there were points of it. But I think I was like crying. I was finding it so amazing. Actually, I'll tell you where I learned to run. It's like I had a job where I had this hideous commute, and I used to have to get up at like 4:30 and sit on the M25. And I used to listen to Chris Evans on when he was on Radio 2 in the morning. And I can't remember the details precisely, but I remember this was before I was running, but it really stuck with me, and it's completely helped. And it's what I saw you tweet, actually. It was similar to that. He said, if you're finding it really tough, he said, you only need to know two things about getting going with running. And I might be misquoting him, and I'm sure he's not going to listen, so I'll just carry on. But maybe he will. He said, if you're finding it really tough, just shuffle. And then the second one was, if it's feeling okay, go a bit further. That was literally it. I only needed those two things. So first day I ran about 2 miles and shuffled and felt a bit achy the next day, and I'll do that again. And then the third day, maybe I was like, oh, it's sore, I'll just go a bit further. And I still go by that. So on Saturday, I felt really under the weather. I don't know whether it was hay fever or I had a bit of a virus or something, but I really wanted to kind of do a longer run. And I just kept, I only have to shuffle it. And then by the end of it, I felt really great. And then often what I find, I don't know if you find this, but I often find if I do a really slow run, I feel amazing the next day. It's like I've just warmed up my engines. That's what it feels like to me. But we don't do it often enough, do we? We don't do these very long, partly because we maybe don't have time, but these long shuffles where you have to stop and walk up a hill for a bit, and then you just carry on, and it's all very relaxed. And that's you're doing it for that. You're just oiling the engine, really, aren't you? And then the next day, suddenly everything's going, go for it, and you feel about 100 times better. So I still go by those two rules, really. They seem to have worked so far.
Yeah, I think they definitely work, and I'm absolutely terrible. For years, I would just go out and run as fast as I can, and I've actually, and this feels a bit bad for the people I'm talking about, but one of the ways where I cannot slow myself down, if I go out on my own, I'll go, right, I'm going to go slower, I'm going to try and do X minute miles rather than whatever, and I'll end up looking at my watch at the end, and I've gone my marathon pace, or I've got my half marathon pace. What is wrong with me? And the only way that I manage to slow myself down is by doing group runs with people who are, without being horrible to them, a little bit slower. And actually that's a lot of fun, because then I have a nice chat as well.
Yeah, or sometimes what I think also helps is sometimes if you go on a new route and you're not quite sure of the route and you have to keep stopping, because I'm a real lone ranger. I can just about run with my other half sometimes. depending on how my head is. But I mean, I've run away from people at races because they've been talking to me. It's like, don't talk to me. I've been so rude to people on a race. They just keep talking, and you get into the same pace as them, and you're really tired because it was, you know, 10-15 miles into a marathon or something, and they're like having this chat. And I remember I stood to one side and let them go by, and they said, "Oh, are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I just can't deal with your conversation, sorry." And then off they went, and then unfortunately I caught them up again. So then I like really had to run past them, and they were like, "Well, we're all out, for us it's a social." And I'm like, "Yeah, not for me." So they must have thought I was so rude. But yeah, so I'm not very good at running with other people, but I totally get it. I really do get it. You have to almost make it into a slow run somehow, however you do that. Yeah, definitely. I'm running the Suffolk coast at the weekend. We're going to go, because it's the longest day at the moment, isn't it? But the closest we can do it is at the weekend. So we're going to get the train up on Saturday night to Lowestoft and start at midnight really, and run the Suffolk coast through the night and through the day. And that'll be a really slow run because we'll have to stop and we'll have to get our torches out and have to get some food and everything. And those days I'm discovering are my training days. There's just amazing training, really, really good training. Even though it's running a lot, it's like 50 miles, but it's so slow that it doesn't really harm you.
I had a similar thing, not running 50 miles at a time, but I was ill last year, and when I was coming back from that illness, I was trying to stop myself running at that same pace I was before. And actually that's when I started to do a lot more trail running, because when you're looking for roots on the ground and you're ducking bits of tree and so on poking out at you, well, it naturally slows your pace down, and you maybe have to walk up a hill or whatever. So
there was a bit on this ultra that I did, the 71 miler, where it was so there were just nettles. There were these really steep steps. A lot of it was on these river paths, and it was just ridiculous, you know. It's just had to, there's places where, and I think that's what ultra running, people who are veterans more at ultra running, they're not going to be surprised at hearing any of this. They're like, yeah, that's it, is that you can run, you run the bits that you can run and you walk the bits that you walk, and that's how it works.
Yeah, I heard something about a couple of the Barkley Marathon entrants, which obviously is, sort of the most ridiculous ultras.
Yeah.
They were talking about, I think, John Kelly, who completed it, didn't he? And they were saying that he is, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but he does a pretty quick marathon, a 2-something marathon, 2:30, 2:40. And yet when he was running in the Barclays at times, they were clocking him as running 22 minute miles because it was so hard to run through it.
Just walking, absolutely. Yeah, it's just traveling. The thing that's so amazing that I would love people to know is it's like you just get to travel on foot and see everywhere. And I do think that there's some combination about people who are climate aware, who are aware of what's going on with the environment and care about the environment, and runners, because we see it. We get this incredible appreciation of how the world connects on a small scale. So if I talk about this run, this 71 miler, I had to get there were some options. So there's a 3 estuary, a 4 estuary, or a 5 estuary run. So I did the 4. I went for the 71 because that was the longest I'd run before. That was 33 miles. So it was, I was like, can I do it? I don't know. I did. There's the middle distance runners. Was the middle distance, and we've got the boat over. So you got the boat over to somewhere, the Shotley Peninsula, which is over here in Suffolk, and then I ran from Shotley to Blackshall. Now, for people that know Suffolk, that's amazing in the sense of I saw Orford Castle, Butley, Woodbridge, Felixstowe. I just ran Suffolk. I got to see, all these areas and connect them on foot, and you just develop this appreciation of your micro environment. I mean, I do think it's hugely connected with people just jumping on flights, in that people don't have that much of a sense of scale anymore, because we just jump into our cars and go, well, I want to go to wherever, and I want to go to Spain, so I'm just going to go to Spain. And they don't even know that there's a wood up the road. I mean, I'm still discovering. I've lived over here now for 5, nearly 6 years, and I don't know anything I know nothing. I'm literally scraping the surface. And this is somebody that's run the Suffolk coast and run the estuaries and runs regularly. And I still don't know all the footpaths around me. And I still discover woodlands. And I still don't know what half the trees are, and I'm a grower and I love trees and everything. And so I think the more micro travel that you do in your environment, the more of an appreciation and wonder that you get of what's already there. You don't need to go to all these places, and you come to appreciate nature, really, and you have so much more respect for the world around you. I do think it's linked. Yeah,
I think we definitely have a pretty fantastic countryside in this in this UK of ours when we go out there and have a look at it. And you hinted earlier about obviously exploring your local area, but also using running to explore the country as a whole.
Yes, definitely. So I've learned around where I am. I think I'd really like to do more of Essex now. So I actually live in North Essex, but I work a lot in Suffolk. So at the moment, I'm the executive director. Sounds very grand. I'm the executive director of the Suffolk Primary Head Teachers Association. So I get to visit schools across the county. And so what I'll often do is I'll try and find myself a run. So the other day I went somewhere and it was near Rendlesham Forest, and so I made sure I had an hour in the middle of the day and got to run in Rendlesham, which was great. And in Leeds, so I went to Leeds at the weekend on the train, or a bit of electric car driving, which is also a pain because you can't always find the electric car charging points. But anyway, and just waking up in Leeds early in the morning, and I just went out and ran up the canal, and suddenly I've had I think, better experience. Not of everyone, I'm sure there are other people that do it, but what I mean is that, when people go and visit places, they don't run around it, do they, necessarily? And I got up really early and ran up the canal and just had the most beautiful hour to myself on the canals in Leeds. I worked out where the Industrial Museum is. So then we went back in the afternoon and visited that. It's amazing. And there was swans with their cygnets and all this kind of thing. So by running around on foot, you just get to see so much more. You get a sense of place of wherever you go. I think I think people are missing out if they're not doing that.
So there you go, people. You heard it here. Get out in your local area. Get out wherever you're going. Have a run around. Rebecca, thank you so much for telling us your story. Check out the Running Out of Time relay, people. And Rebecca, again, thank you so much for joining us today on the Running Tales podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. And I'm looking forward to seeing Northampton very soon.
Thanks so much to Rebecca Leek for joining us today on the Running Tales podcast. Good luck to her on tomorrow's relay. If you want to know a little bit more about it, go to runningoutofTime.com and you can find out exactly what they are doing and why. If you enjoyed this week's Running Tales podcast, please leave us a review wherever you listen. A rating as well would be fantastic. It really does help other people to find the podcast and to listen to great stories like Rebecca's story you heard today. You can also go to our Substack page, runningtales.substack.com, where you'll be able to read all about the Running Out of Time relay and about a host of other running stories, which we hope you'll enjoy. Anyway, have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you next week again for another Running Tales podcast.